Hey, I've got DJ Foxx with me. He's now the world champion Tough Mudder, which is a 24-hour obstacle course. And he's been using, ketone ester with Anthony over at the Durango house where they do a lot of distance, kind of like a boot camp for long distance runners. And they also have like a city slicker type event where they, a few times a year, will just invite people to come over and crash, and you can talk about that as well. DJ, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for the time. Happy to be here. This is exciting.
So, yeah, so let's back up. When did you first start doing ultra marathons and all that?
Yeah, so I've been running for almost 5 years now, and I did my first ultra in 2019. I
Okay.
did the Spartan Killington Beast. So that, or sorry, Ultra Beast. So that was a 50K with like 15,000 feet of climbing and 60 obstacles. That was my first attempt at anything over the marathon distance. Yeah.
Wow. And tell me about what you guys do over in Durango. And do you
Yeah,
live
and
there full
Durango.
time? Is that your full time
Yeah.
residence?
Yep, I'm here full time now. I'm originally from Central New York, like Syracuse area. It's probably the biggest city around that people might recognize. But I moved to Durango at the end of March of this year, so I've been here for almost 8 months now.
Okay.
And yeah, this is the full time residence. I picked up, athletics as a full time gig now, so this is the spot to be.
Let's do a plug for Anthony. And what does he do as far as, are you guys just like co-runners? Is he a coach? Is it just freestyle out there? And how many people are in this Durango house?
Yeah, so Anthony and I are training partners, and we collaborate and bounce ideas off of each other all the time. So in a sense, like he helps me, he coaches me in a sense, right? He guides me. He's the one who's got the vast experience when it comes to ultra running. So if he's got ideas, I'm definitely here to listen. There's currently four of us in the house. Over the
Okay.
summer, there was 7 or 8 of us though. Like people kind of come and go depending on the seasons and things like that. But yeah, I'm a full time resident over here. We just got Sam, who's going to be full time, and then Josh and Abby will be back over the next couple months, and I'm sure they'll be here for the rest of the winter and spring, summer, and fall, and then they seem to take off when winter rolls around, start a winter, and go see family and things like that. But
And how
yeah,
many times a year do you guys have, more people? You invite more people to come out for like a scheduled camp, like a city
yeah,
slickers type camp?
yeah. So ideally we're gonna do one at least every quarter, like a
Okay.
really solid camp. So we'll have all of our practitioners available for that week. So we'll do like some body work with Alex at Durango Movement. He is the best, absolute best in the world. If you've got anything that's bugging you in your body, like let this man kind of figure it out, and he'll give you some good release. We'll also do some holotropic breath work with Issa. We got a sound healer. We do all of our training, and our next one actually is at the end of January and early February. It's for it's kind of based around a Durango event called Snowdown. So that's like a week long thing where there's like 140 different events in within Snowdown. So it'll be a bunch of silly things like treadmill challenges and see how many people you can fit in an outhouse and all sorts of different crazy stuff. So
Fun.
we'll base it around that. So we'll have some fun, and then yeah, we'll train. I'll be ideally getting ready for my first road marathon in that. So my volume will be up. We'll be running fast and having some fun. Yeah, we
How many
got plenty
miles
of
will
gear.
the house do? How many miles will the average person that visits do?
So that varies. I feel like when people walk in the door here, they immediately gravitate towards at least like 70 miles, which
Okay.
is an exciting thing. So I got out. I didn't even run a 40-mile week last year until about July. And then I came and visited in November, and I got two 60-mile weeks in. And that was the peak of my volume for 2021. And then 2022 rolled around. I came here in March. I ran a 50-mile week. I ran a 60-mile week, and then I ran basically 70s all year. Except for at the end of the first training block, I snuck an 80 in at the end. And then the next training block, I was able to string 200s together in the middle of that. And
Oh,
then leading into World's Toughest, I put 400-mile weeks together with a couple of 70s on both ends. So it varies. Anthony runs 100-mile to 125-mile weeks, and I'm looking, anywhere between 70 and 100, it looks like now. So, but it depends on what you can handle and your training background and things like that.
Right. More isn't always better. You can overtrain, you can get injured, it's finding
Exactly.
that sweet
Yeah.
spot.
Yep. So we always kind of say, know thyself, right? Don't overdo it. Figure it out. You got to find that sweet spot. And there's a point of diminishing returns, especially early on in this thing. So
do
the
you
best
see
thing you can
yourself
do is be
mainly
consistent.
do you see yourself mainly as an obstacle course runner first and then an ultra distance runner, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, that's interesting. I started running first and then got into the obstacle course racing pretty quickly. I would say that's my main focus is the obstacle course racing. Because if it was just running, I wouldn't be doing a lot of the accessory strength work that I'm doing for obstacle course racing, like all the pull-ups and the bear crawls and things like that, and having a little bit more mass on my upper body that, is potentially detrimental to just pure running. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
don't
the main focus
necessarily
is
want that.
obstacle stuff.
You don't necessarily want extra muscle mass for a 100 miler.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So when did Anthony? Let's talk about ketones now. When did he introduce you to them? Have you used them? We've got the KE1, the KE4, the snake water, and then we can talk about the R13 as well. I've
Yeah.
seen a few photos of you drinking that on Instagram.
Yeah,
So
sure.
how was your introduction to that, and what did you settle upon for training and then for race day?
Yeah. So my first introduction into ketones in general, and this is not always recommended, is I did it on race day. I did it at World's Toughest Mudder last year. And Anthony went like, dude, give it a shot. I started with a KE1 on the start line. He said, go for it, man. He's like, I really believe in these things. He said, especially if you're eating or consuming these with some sugars, you shouldn't have any like big tanks in your blood glucose. So
Right.
you should be safe doing it on race day. So that was my first ever introduction to him. KE1 on the start line, felt great. And then a couple, so that was the 24-hour race again last year, right? And then a couple capfuls of KE4 along the way. And I don't actually know the timeframes on those. I think I had like 3 or 4 capfuls with some big breaks in between them over the rest of that race. But
Was it you were taking carbs during that race as well?
Oh yeah.
So
yep,
gel
definitely.
packets every 2 hours.
Yeah, so it was way more calories than that. So what I was doing is I would have a serving of a product called Sustainelite by Endurelite. So that's like 130 calories and maybe like 30 grams of carbohydrates. I would do one of those every lap, coupled with
Every lap. Is that like an hour lap?
yeah, so they're 5 miles. So they were taking me like an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, like 30 grams of carbs out of that. And then a Morton gel as well. And I think that's about 30 grams of carbs. And then if I wanted something in the pit, I would just eat it. So I was having like quarter peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or some bites of pizza and things like that. So yeah, lots of food attached to that. That was
so
my
then
first.
You started using it in training thereafter, or?
Yep. So I didn't use it after the race until I got back to Durango at the Ultra House. Yeah, and then I started using it in training, and again, I was comfortable with the KE1s, so that was my first go-to. I like the fact that it's got the salts and the electrolytes in it as well. And Anthony he put the caveat on like start here, and then if you're going to go to KE4s, start a little bit smaller, right? Because he's like you can potentially overdo those and like tank blood glucose, and I was just starting to really get back into a lower carbohydrate nutrition plan overall, right? So
But not keto though, just lower carb, non-keto.
Correct. Not entirely keto. So I'll do a hard keto reset like once or twice a year. But besides that, I'm just low carb. And what that means, an easy way to explain it is I just eat carbs at dinner and not a crazy amount by any means, right? Like I'll have a sweet potato or maybe I'll have some rice with my steak, you know? Yeah. So
you're using them in training did you use them post workout, and did you use them before bed or mainly pre-workout? And do you do workouts fasted with just ketones, or do you dual fuel the workout?
Yeah, I would say 90% of my workouts this year were fasted and just ketones if I consumed anything. And most of the time I would take the ketones for longer efforts. So I would be out, and I could kind of feel whatever glycogen stores I had really start to dive on me and tank. And that's when I would pull out like a KE1 most of the time. I would drink a KE1 halfway through the run, let's say, if it was a really long effort. And it would be a really big pickup, honestly. It would, kind of bring my attention back to the activity and put me back in it and make me, I feel good. Yeah.
So we're talking like when you do a 10 to 15 miler, and the last 25% is when you'd whip out the fuel. So you're burning your own body's fat stores at the beginning, and then your body just can't make enough. Well, I think the theory is the body can't make enough to fuel the brain. So then the brain starts to go, and then you can give, the exogenous ketones at that time. Is that about right?
Yeah, that sounds
8
pretty close to accurate.
10 mile?
And it would be, so if I was doing anywhere up to like, let's call it 12 miles, I'm probably going to go on almost nothing, not even ketones. It's when I even get beyond that, I'll start to take the ketones. Okay. Or if I'm going to add, I was experimenting with a little bit of intensity as well to see how that affected me. And I really liked it. Again, I would do my warm up, and then I would go through my hard efforts. And then I would take either a KE1 or maybe like 5 to 10 milliliters of KE4 when I started to really feel the effects of those hard efforts. And again, it would be a lot of like just like the cognitive side of things. Like the body would feel pretty good, but I might start just like falling out of like the focus of the workout, right? Yeah. So a cap full of KE4, maybe 2 capfuls of KE4, and then do the second half of the workout. And I really enjoyed it for that as well.
How long does it take to kick in once you take it, as far as you feeling it hit your brain?
I would say it's pretty quick. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes at most.
It can be less than that. It can be really fast, especially if you're on a couch. That's one thing, but if you're actually running and your system's pumping blood, it can be pretty instant. It can be as fast as like 3 minutes.
Yeah,
it can be pretty fast.
Okay, yeah, I had used I did a 50-mile FKT attempt this year. So I went to go run around Cranberry Lake, and I took a wrong turn, so I missed the time, but that's a different story. But I was doing 10 milliliters of KE4. I tried to like overdo it on that run. That was like an experiment for me leading into World's Toughest this year. So it was like 10 milliliters of KE4 every 2 hours or so.
Okay, yeah, that's a good, with an empty stomach and no food.
So
and
this
and
was
no
coupled to carbs as well.
Okay.
And like that, so that was big for me in regards to the amount of KE4 over that amount of time, and it was about 8 hours. So I ended up doing like about the whole 60 milliliter bottle on the course of that run, and I felt great every time. I would start to feel a little off. And I think like there's a lot of factors in that, right? It was 50 miles. It was 8 hours, right. Over 8 hours. So I'm starting to get a little salty and dehydrated and things like that. But yeah, the KE4s again, like I would just kind of be out there and be like, oh, you'd have like one of those feelings of like, how bad do I really want to keep?
Yeah. Why am I still doing this? Self-doubt. You start making negotiations with yourself and say, well, no one will notice if I go 2% slower. So one thing you might want to try, just as a suggestion, is see how far you can push it with just the ketones, or maybe even a tiny amount of glucose, just because there's certain systems that need a little bit of glucose. So instead of a 6-part carbs, 1 part ketones, which is kind of what it sounded like, try doing it in reverse. So it's 6-part ketones, but much less. But then just a tiny amount of glucose. And the theory is that while running, we think the ketones alone may trigger some more endogenous production.
Okay.
But if you add a bunch of gels, you're not going to get that. Right. You're going to kill that. So, and we have had some, non-published stuff where they were checking people that were taking these microdoses, just ketone ester, and they were able to see an increase in fat burning in their breath. So
through like a respiratory exchange test.
So, one might say, hey, I only took, let's see, 12 calories of ketones. How is it possible that, or 24 calories, how is it possible that that's doing anything? Well, the only thing that would make sense, well, there's a couple things. One, it could be that it's helping you trigger more endogenous production. But the second thing is that the harmful effects of sugar might actually be where a lot of the benefit is, because the sugar is so inflammatory. So yes, it is a fuel source, but it's got give and take. It's inflammatory. So that can lead to your legs being tired and creating lactic acid. Ketones create 0 lactic acid, just no lactic acid as a byproduct. So you might want to try and play with that, and maybe you will experience, if you take too much ketones, the drop in blood sugar and then that can kill your race. So don't do that game day, but play
Yeah.
around with that and find out where your tolerance is. We find that the range for non-keto people, and I would call them also non-low carb people, just regular sugar eaters, that their range of how much ketones they can take is much narrower. So
Yeah.
they need a little bit more than the keto people can just take a tiny amount sometimes and it can help. They need a little bit more than that, but then they can't go over a certain threshold. Whereas keto people, they can take a tiny amount because their alternative is no fuel. So a little bit of fuel is very noticeable. But then that upper end, they're able to use the fuel. This one guy, he said money was no object for him. So he's like, I was like, great, let's, instead of doing this, 5, 10 mLs, go straight to 60 mLs and go and do, a 1 hour hill workout and, just report back and let's see how it went, expecting him to have a crash in blood sugar and just, figure out what was too much. And he called me back. He's like, oh my God, I had the PR, the best race ever. It's like, okay, well, so we're kind of learning different bodies can take different amounts. And there are some Tour de France athletes that can actually take 7 full bottles of KU4 per day. So they're just a hyper responder on the body. Yeah. So play around with different amounts. You might be surprised and you might just feel more fresh. And, all those, part of that, the carbs might be part of the problem for you getting the brain issues. And there was a clinical trial where they compared glucose to ketone ester with glucose, actually ketone ester with a regular diet. They didn't just take glucose, just a regular diet. And then they did the ketogenic diet. And the result was the ketogenic diet and the ketone ester with the regular diet, the neuros, the way that the brain was functioning, the glucose group, they determined that the glucose was disrupting the neural network. So it's the glucose that was, making things worse. So maybe part of your brain fog is the excess sugar.
Yeah,
so, something to play with. It's so early right now. What about on the recovery side? So post long workout days or even post every day, have you tried incorporating 10 mLs post workout?
Yeah. So I'll do 5 to 10 milliliters after almost every single workout. And I'll couple that with whey protein as well. Just like muscle preservation and like try to bring inflammation down and things like that. And
what's your timing with the whey protein and the ketones?
Immediately after my workout, I walk in the door, I mix my shake, I drink the shake, and I take the ketones right after.
So you might want to try different things. I mean, if that works, great. You're set it and forget it. But allowing the ketones to come into your system first. If you take them after or with the whey, it just drastically slows the release and what it can do. And it's like the body may prefer ketones, but then this other fuel comes in and it kind of butts in line and doesn't let it get to the system. So maybe try a 20, 30 minute difference and, see if you notice anything. You might find yourself able to take less and have the same effect, or take the same amount and then have, more of an effect. Now, how are you going to define more of an effect? I guess you have to look at if your HRV record or just, subjectively your level of soreness, if you are or not. What about before bed? Have you ever done that during training days, especially hard days?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of it. Something I definitely want to experiment with a little bit more. So I've got the Oura Ring to do some sleep data stuff. And I didn't see any like massive benefits in sleep architecture. And again, I was doing small amounts. I was doing 5 milliliters or so before bed to just see if anything would happen. Right. Maybe if anything, I had a little bit better latency, just like time it took to fall asleep. And that's hard to say, right? Like that changed for me a little bit over time anyways. So something I want to play with a little bit more.
So let me give you a little bit of protocols on that and some updates. The clinical trials, initially they did a recovery trial where they simulated a Tour de France and they took 50 mLs post workout and then 50 mLs before bed. Now, if I took 50 mLs, hell, if I took 10 mLs before bed and I didn't work out that day, I'd be up for hours. It'd mess me up. So you have to really, it's a function of how tired you are. It's almost as if your system, the more tired it is, the ketones focus on the recovery aspect before it turns into a fuel that wakes you up and an energy. So it's a direct function of how tired you are. So if I go to sleep at 2 or 3 a.m. because I've got some late night, Black Friday deal I've got to put out or something, I will take 10 mLs and I'll sleep, much better during that, restricted 4 or 5 hours. But if I take even 5 mLs, I've got to do 2.5 because I'm already keto. So I already have a baseline of ketones. And then you add ketones to that, it can just be too much. But if you have a hard workout day, yeah, you could try, 20 mls, 30 mls. And even the Tour de France guys that are taking the 50, with the feedback that I got when I talked to them directly is that, oh, sometimes it hurts my sleep. It makes my sleep too light. I'm like, yeah, you're taking too much. Cut it in half. If you notice that your sleep is, lighter, like one eye's open the entire night, then you got to cut it in half. Don't think that less, like the Tour de France people, I told them, hey, just don't go from 50 to 0, thinking that, oh, it didn't work. You just took wildly way too much. So try that different range. If you're doing a 10, 15 miler, I think you could easily do 10 mLs, if not 20 mLs, and see how that what that does, for your sleep.
Yeah, and I'm logging and tracking everything I've got going on right now, so I'll have some more information to relay. We got a nice long season coming up, especially like early. Like this is the time for me to kind of play with things and see what works well and what really is not the right way to move forward with as we move on in the season. So
let's go to the Tough Mudder race that was a couple of weeks ago. So you flat out won that. Did you go into it hoping to win, expecting to win? What was your level of confidence on that?
Yeah, I went in that knowing I could win if I had a good day, right? Which is really exciting because the other 24-hour event, obstacle course racing event that happens during the year got canceled. So everybody from that field came over and competed at World's Toughest. I'm like, nice. Now we got a really solid depth of field. This is exciting. If you do something special today, you beat everybody. You beat everybody who wants to do well at these 24-hour events. So this is good. I won. I started off. I run my own race in these things, right? Like you can't race right at the start. If you're matching somebody else, you're probably doing it wrong, right? So I sat in probably 25th to 30th place for, the first 6 hours. I finally broke into the top 10 somewhere around hour 10, made it to the top 5. Let's call it hour 17. So just slowly worked my way up and then hopped into the top 3, hour 20, and took over first place at hour 23. So
at 23. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Right at the end. And then I put the hammer down, nail in the coffin, and I worked hard for the rest of that race to come away with the win. It was really exciting. World champ, baby. It's good stuff.
That was your biggest win to date by far, right?
Oh yeah. Last year I came in third. And I ran 105 miles both years. Last year was significantly easier based off of the weather. Last year it was in Nevada. It was the desert. The high was like 85. The low was 60. It was loose sand running though last year, so that was tough. So this year the running itself was a lot faster. It was trails in Atmore, Alabama, lots of dirt and firm runnable stuff, but the obstacles were a little bit more challenging, and there was a lot of overhead work, like grip work, so rigs and monkey bars and things like that, right? So it was grip intensive, so the upper body took a lot of abuse as well. And then the weather, it got cold. It got below 30 degrees this year. Yeah. So it was like full wetsuit and keeping your hands warm. I've still got a little bit of numbness in the tips of a couple of my fingers. Yeah. It's a lot better than it was. Right. It's definitely coming back. I'm now not concerned that it's never going to come back, but yeah.
So did you use ketones in this race? And it's okay if you didn't.
I did.
Protocol, food beforehand, any food, what'd you do? Breakfast?
Yeah. So my breakfast was a bowl of white rice with 1 egg and like a drizzle of maple syrup in it. So I'm topping off glycogen stores first thing in the morning. And this was at 8 a.m. So 4 hours before the race, well out so I could digest and get it out of my stomach. And then the first thing I took, again, right at the start line, was a full KE1. And then I took KE1s. And then, so the plan was, I knew the first few laps would be fast because obstacles open on like a rolling basis. So there's no obstacles open the first lap. And then hour 1, they'll open, like anywhere from 2 to 5. And then at hour 8, everything's open, right? So this course slowly gets slower and slower. So the plan was to go 1 at the start and then complete 3 laps and then take another one. And then after that, so that happened. So that was like, maybe 2.5 hours in, I took a second.
But you're taking gels too, right?
Yes.
It's not
Yep.
the same combo.
dual fueling, right? So this time I wanted to go on liquid calories as far as I could. So I was 2 servings of the Sustain Elite, which is that Endure Elite product. So again, now we're up to about 250 calories plus one of the Morton gels. So
Okay.
that's 350 calories every lap I run. And they were fast at first. So this is the first ones were 35 minutes. And then my slowest, I averaged once everything was open, probably like an hour and 20 minutes. But yeah, so that I did that every lap for the first 13 hours until I started to realize I was just getting a little bit too salty because I wasn't sweating because it was cold. So that Sustain Elite product in 2 servings has just over 400 milligrams of sodium. Yeah. So once I was like starting to get dry mouth and I'm drinking a lot, and yeah, I just realized I was just getting a little bit too salty. So what I did is I swapped that bottle out with a bottle that had 4 tablespoons of maple syrup now. So now I've got the calories and I've got the carbs, but I don't have all the sodium associated with it. And that would also be mixed in a 500 milliliter soft flask. And again, the one Morton gel stayed the same. And then once I got past that, so now I'm like at hour 15, I started to eat some solid foods. Just I would get around to the pit. They had like some pizza. I would look at it. It would look good. Now it's like, now feed your soul a little bit as well too. Right.
Right.
So a couple bites of pizza, some mini Snickers. So I would say outside, and then I did that for the rest of the 24 hours, right? Like I think I had 1 or 2 Snickers, the little mini ones every lap. I had the bottle, and I would start to toggle back and forth between the Sustain Elite and the maple syrup, depending on how I felt on salts, and the Morton gel. And then that, yeah, I think over the course of the full 24 hours, I had 8 KE1s and
8 KE1s, okay.
very evenly spread
So
out.
do you think about switching to the KE4 because of that salt? Just to kind of lower your salt intake,
I
because the
didn't.
KE1's got a decent salt load
Yeah.
as well. Something to think about.
I actually didn't consider it. I did have the KE4s, and I was just waiting for it to kind of call to me. And
Okay.
yeah, it never did. I was happy with the KE1s, but that is a good idea. Now I did forget in the moment, right? With so many things
Oh
happening
yeah,
that
yeah.
there is no salt in the KE4. So that would have been a good plan too. Maybe,
Maybe one day we'll have a gel packet so you can take it with you, so you
that'd be
can
great. Yeah.
drink along the way.
Yeah. You're coming
And
out with all sorts of cool stuff. So
did you down any afterwards? So what I would suggest after a race like that, I mean, half a bottle to a full bottle of KE4, like you can't really, well, someone would always overdo it if you say you can't overdo it.
yeah, of
But
course.
afterward, it's not going to mess up your race, right? So
Yeah.
you could take a lot more
Mhm.
and really help with that recovery so you can get your system back, because it must take you at least a week, if not 2, to not be wrecked.
Yeah, so it's been just over 2 weeks now, and I got on the bike for the first time yesterday. I've been beat up, but right after the race, I took 15 milliliters, and like looking back on it now, I think I should have taken significantly more. I had a lot of inflammation; my feet swelled up quite a
Yeah.
bit, and things like that. So I took 15 mils was the big dose, and then I was like 5 to 10 mils every day after that, just in like a little bit of a maintenance phase. And yeah, I wish I
Play around with some one of your long run days. I mean, I think Anthony's done it before. He's done a 50 miler on just ketones,
yeah,
and
yes,
I don't know if he had breakfast or not. That's an important variable. But he
unlikely.
was able to do just ketones the entire 50 miles. So
Yeah,
all that inflammation that you're talking about is from the sugar. I mean, also from running 105
the
miles.
abuse of the event. Yeah.
But it's something to play around with and see how your body responds to it. Now, have you ever played with the snake water? Did you ever try any of that stuff?
I did. I used the snake water, and it was okay. I would
I
rather
know
take the
Anthony
KE1
doesn't
to be
like it, so I
totally
say,
honest.
if it's not your thing, some people
Yeah,
absolutely love it. Some people it doesn't, work with their system, but
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah. I was basically the only one around here drinking it, and I enjoyed it while it was here. But again, for the most part, I would rather take a KE1.
Okay.
I think I get a little bit more out of it. I know the snake water has like the little bit of caffeine in it,
No, there's
right?
no caffeine. It has
There's no
dynamine and
caffeine.
T-creen, which is
It's
kind of
tea
similar.
green.
T-creen
Okay.
and dynamine, or
Hmm.
dynamine. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it also has a slow carbohydrate, so that
Okay.
isomaltulose. And the idea there
Right.
is to keep you from having your blood sugar tank too much by having just like a micro dose
Yeah.
of a slow carbohydrate. That's the theory.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah, I
know,
think if I was going to recommend the snake water itself, I would need a little bit more time with it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
some more days on it to see what it does.
Have you played with the ketone water? That's
I,
not so much a
yeah.
actual, you don't take that pre-workout or during workout. That's more of just an anytime hanging around the house thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the ketone water. It's delicious. First of all, right. And it doesn't have any of the R13 in it, correct?
Right. Yeah. It's just a straight ketone ester, 3 grams
Yeah.
ketone
Yeah.
ester. Keep it
I love the
simple.
ketone water.
Yeah.
We've got a couple in the cupboard right now. So yeah,
So we just announced, I don't know if you
they're
saw the
awesome.
video, that we're making a 12-ounce version of the snake water. So,
Yeah.
with that dynamine and nootropics in there to really just replace all the Red Bull or Monster or Bangs that
Yeah.
people might be drinking. And again, with no caffeine. And then
That's something
also
I'd
I
definitely
saw
be
you
interested in trying.
a few times using the R13. When do you pull that out?
That is our celebratory beverage. Yeah.
Right.
When we finish a race, we'll have one of those, right at the finish line. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Soak in our
that
accomplishments or get through like a really big training block and time to dive into those.
yeah, that'll work for recovery from a race as well as the KE4. You can still take both of them. You can put them together. And then when you're, instead of regular ethanol for any happy hour type events, people bring their own mule or
Yeah.
GNT. And we're working on a beer. We're working
Oh,
on a beer right now. We've made the beer.
okay.
We just have to take the alcohol out and
Yeah.
put in the R13. So hopefully that'll come soon. And then we're redoing the mule. I admitted that the second batch of the mule wasn't as good as the first, so we kind of liquidated it. But this third batch will be a little bit spicier and a little bit sweeter. So I have a little bit more of a kick to it. So I'll make sure you guys, get right when it comes off the line, you guys will get, a first box of that.
That'll be
Any
awesome.
other tips that you have for people when you tell them to try the ketone ester the first time, like, protocols or just, the best way to give it a first attempt?
Yeah, I think the like a really safe place to start is with a KE1. I really think you'd have a hard time overdoing that. So I say, go out for a workout, do it fasted, start with it before you even head out the door and just see, right? And like go into it with knowing what it's like without it, right? And just like really evaluate it and start there. And then if things feel good, then take it on your long run and see what it does to you halfway. And just really, really start paying attention. And if the KE1s feel good, go into the KE4s. Yeah. See how they do for you. Start small, but be open to kind of experimenting and seeing how some of these larger doses do for you. That's my plan for this year.
So the funny thing you said there was, take it on a fasted ride or workout, but then some people, they don't work out fasted. So then here they're comparing 300 calories of Morton, and then they cut out the Morton, they go to a fasted ride and they take 12 calories or 15 calories of this stuff. And then they're like, I didn't notice a difference or wasn't the same. And it's just like, no, you can't do that. You have to really have a better, comparison.
Start with your baseline.
You got to have, do the fasted, or if you're not going to do the fasted and you're comparing it to glucose, it's a little bit tricky. And people, they want things to work just like caffeine, where you just take it anytime. It's just a fuel source. Yeah. But we've got a dynamic here where they're kind of competing with glucose, and take some people a while to figure it out. We had this one Miami trainer. He said the first 2 times he took it, he had to have his wife pick him up like 50 miles away because he just bonked or just it messed up everything. And he said that was actually better than the drink doing nothing. If it did nothing, he would just be like, this is all worthless. The fact that it actually did something, even though it was super negative, he's like, wow, it did something. So then he looked at the protocols again and removed some things that, he figured he'd add some power bars beforehand. I'm like, that's not in the protocol. He took them out, and then he was freaking out. And now he's getting, all of his, Miami riders, to use it. So the protocol matters, and everyone's different. Takes a little while to figure it out. And, if it doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back, or, contact us and we'll try and troubleshoot it. And 9 times out of 10, we can, figure it out. But there is always that 1 out of 10 that said, hey, you did everything, that's it.
Yeah.
But I think recovery, though, I don't think there's anyone that has taken it for recovery and felt more sore the next day.
Yeah.
So that one's quite reliable. But thank you again, and congratulations on the Tough Mudder Award. I think I have behind you. Is that All of your other races, does that include? Is it that
So
black
this was
one?
all a part of the same race. That's like my pit
Okay.
crew bib. That's the bib for running 100 miles with like
Oh,
the
nice.
105 patch on it. Champions bib, leader bib, and then the original race bib I started in. So
Nice, nice. And
yeah,
when's your next 24-hour race?
that'll be World's Toughest Mudder in November 2023. I'm going back. Yeah.
Right. So
Besides
what
that,
other
I like,
races are you doing along the way?
yeah, I'm going to do a few Spartans. I'm actually going to start the year with a marathon
Okay.
and see if I can get some speed in my legs to then transfer to World's Toughest and see if I can do, some more miles and do something special out there. I'm not real fast, but I'm really durable and, I'm pretty mentally strong. So I stay in the game. So if I can actually start to run well, I think I could be really dangerous at the event. So that's the start. And then like a hybrid event, they call it. So I'm looking at an event called High Rocks, which
Okay.
is like, you do a sled push, run a kilometer, do a sled pull, run a kilometer, sandbag lunges times 8. So you end up running 8K with 8 workout stations every kilometer. Yeah. And then I'm going to do a couple of Spartan races, probably a couple of road half marathons again, and one longer event towards the end of the year, like another 50 miler or maybe like 100K.
What
Yeah.
kind of
And then
times are you
really
looking to
big
get
event.
for the marathon road race?
I've never done one, so it's hard to say, but I would love to Boston qualify at least. So I got to run 3 hours, which I think is very doable. I think on like a really, really good day for me, I'm probably closer to 250.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for the time. It was fun.